The day Clara announced her engagement was the day I decided to quit my job. I handed her my resignation letter, using the vague excuse of needing to travel and see the world. She simply raised an eyebrow, a soft laugh escaping her lips as she scanned the page. "Come back when you've had your fun," she said, her tone light and dismissive. I greedily took in the sight of her face, memorizing every detail, and just hummed in agreement. She had no idea that I had no intention of ever coming back. My life had started counting down from the very moment she agreed to marry another man. At an elite gathering a few weeks prior, Clara had clung to my arm, introducing me to her circle with a casual yet sincere tone. "My brother wants to explore the world for a while," she'd said to her influential friends. "Please look out for him if your paths cross." The brilliant light from the crystal chandelier above us cast a pure, sharp reflection on her profile. As a friend and a boss, she had always done more than enough for me. But deep down, my feelings were a complicated mess that I could never untangle for her. Clara would never know the real reason I was leaving. The truth was, I had fallen in love with her, and I couldn't bear to stay and watch her build a life with someone else. When the system first brought me into this world, Clara was nothing more than an outcast, an illegitimate daughter pushed to the fringes of her powerful family. She had been exiled from the core circle of power, left to manage only the most marginal businesses that no one else wanted. It was then that I applied to be her secretary. On my first day, I found her at her desk, a cigarette dangling from her lips, looking utterly fed up with the world. "Find another job," she told me, her voice flat. "There's no future with me." I bent down without a word, picked up the stack of papers she had tossed to the floor in frustration, and arranged them neatly on her desk. "The future is something you carve out for yourself," I said softly. "Clara, you're going to be amazing someday." She paused, her dark eyes staring at me for what felt like an eternity, but she didn't say anything more. Later, through the frosted glass of her office door, I saw her slumped in her chair, her head tilted back as she stared at the ceiling. Her eyes sparkled with a hidden moisture, a youthful confusion and vulnerability that stayed with me for the next 10 years. From that first meeting until now, at her engagement party, that image remained. She had seated me at the main table, a position of honor far too close to the bride for comfort. Her elegant white gown brushed past me as she moved, and I caught the subtle shine of the diamond ring on her finger. Clara and her groom were entering a business marriage, a strategic alliance with no real feelings involved. Placing me at the main table was her way of acknowledging my importance in her life, just not in the romantic way I had always hoped for. The system's cold, mechanical voice reminded me of the stakes. If Clara didn't marry me, I would be erased from existence. "You could just ask her," it suggested. "She would say yes to you." I could only manage a faint smile. Holding love hostage wasn't my style. Marriage or not, it was her choice to make. Being by her side for a decade didn't mean she owed me anything. I despised the kind of emotional pressure that came with thinking, "I was there for you, so you should love me back." The system seemed to sigh, its voice devoid of emotion. Vivid, blood-red numbers flashed before my eyes. I only had 30 days left. Using travel as my excuse, I officially resigned. Clara read my resignation letter, her voice low and serious. "You don't need to quit. Just take a break and come back when you're ready." I gave a slight nod, feeling the weakness in my limbs. I must have looked terribly pale enough for her to notice that something was genuinely wrong. Her tone softened. "You've worked so hard for so long. Go rest. There will always be a place for you at the company." I smiled and agreed, though we both knew I was lying. Clara walked over to me, her cool hand touching my face as she sighed. "You're getting too thin," she murmured gently. take care of yourself, eat well." I quietly agreed, my heart aching. On the train out of the city, the system posed a question. "Why do you think she doesn't like you? She has crossed the line for you so many times." It didn't matter anymore, I thought. A cough rattled my chest, and I brought my hand to my mouth, wiping away the specks of blood with a tissue before anyone could see. Looking out the window at the passing landscape, I saw the stars begin to twinkle in the darkening sky. "I'm going to Vidia," I whispered. "I heard it's beautiful there, full of roses." Once, years ago, Clara and I were turned away by a potential business partner. That night, with nowhere else to go, we huddled together for warmth under a cold, damp bridge. Shivering, her lips were close to mine as she made a promise. "Leo," she swore, her breath fogging in the frigid air, "when I make it big, I'll take care of you. You'll live the good life." The memory brought a faint smile to my face, but it quickly faded. A bitter taste filled my mouth, and a wave of regret washed over me. I loved roses so much, yet it seemed I was going to die without ever having received a single one. Curled up in my seat, my eyes burning, I made a new promise to myself. When I got to Vidia, I would buy myself a huge bouquet of the brightest, most ridiculously vibrant roses I could find, the kind that could lift your spirits in an instant. Slowly, I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep. Upon arriving at the station in Vidia, I saw a timid-looking young woman in a wrinkled suit holding a sign with my name on it. I paused for a moment before walking over. She introduced herself as an assistant to one of Clara's local suppliers. "Miss Clara specifically requested that you be well taken care of during your stay," she explained. Clara's business connections in Vidia weren't particularly strong, so I knew it must have taken some effort for her to arrange this. I stared at the young woman for a few seconds before politely declining her offer. "There's no need. I'd prefer to wander around on my own." I then added, "You don't need to tell Miss Clara the details. Just let her know that I'm doing well, having fun, and that everything is good. In this last month of my life, I didn't want to drag her or anyone else into my troubles." I found a small inn with a bar downstairs and decided to stay there. After living so carefully for what felt like 2 lifetimes, I wanted to experience a final, reckless thrill at the end. During the day, when the bar was quiet, I would stroll through the town with an umbrella to shield my pale skin from the sun. I stopped at a local photo studio to have a portrait taken. I asked the photographer to edit it so that I looked even paler, with a gentle, serene smile on my lips. It was to be a black and white photo, framed so I could hold it close. I left the photographer looking utterly confused. Before the system brought me into this world, my previous life had ended just as suddenly, taken by a speeding car. Now, knowing my death was coming, and having the chance to plan for it felt bizarrely peaceful. At night, amidst the aroma of cheap cocktails and loud music, I would dance. I swayed with the rhythm, letting the bodies of strangers brush past me, our arms touching briefly before we moved on. I would turn, offer a subtle smile, and lose myself in the energy of the night, uncertain about the line between life and death. In this final month, I did everything I had once wanted to do, but couldn't. Having done it all, I grew tired quickly. I spent my last days in a rocking chair on the inn's porch, gazing at the distant mountains and lakes, simply awaiting death. Clara called me midway through my stay. Her tone was gentle as she asked how I was enjoying my time away. I hadn't even had a chance to speak when I heard a deep, male voice on the other end of the line. "You don't even bother to answer my calls?" it said. It was her fiancé, Mark. My blood ran cold. Instantly, I heard Clara's voice shift as she gently coaxed him, followed by the man's light, dismissive laughter. Suddenly, the cold in my veins was replaced by a strange warmth. and my heartbeat calmed. I managed a small chuckle into the phone. "It's all good here." Clara, flustered, hung up the phone in a rush. Holding the device in my hand, I stared blankly at the green waves of the lake in the distance. Before the engagement, Clara didn't even know her fiancé. Now, just over half a month later, they seemed to have developed a rapport. I once heard that people who are destined to love each other fall in love at first sight, connect within 3 days, and are head over heels within a week. I had never believed it before, but now I found I couldn't argue against it. My health was getting worse. I could feel life slipping away from me, almost as if I could clearly perceive the process. The blood in my veins felt icy cold, and every cell in my body seemed to be screaming in agony. About 50 meters from the inn, there was an old stone bridge surrounded by a sea of red roses that filled the air with their heavy fragrance. In Vidia's gentle breeze, their petals would fall and be carried away by the rushing river below, floating to unknown depths. This is where I chose to end it all. I didn't want to die in a sterile hospital room, tangled in tubes, lying alone on a white bed simply waiting for the end. One day I received a package from Clara. Inside were beautifully packaged wedding candies and a formal red invitation bearing her and her groom's names. The purple embossed box was filled with dark chocolates. I wiped a smear of blood from the corner of my mouth, tore open the packaging, and, amid the metallic taste in my mouth, placed a piece of chocolate on my tongue. It was bitter, yet rich. It reminded me of the first time Clara and I worked overtime together. My blood sugar had dropped, and she had pulled a handful of vibrantly colored candies from her desk drawer. "Have a few of these, or you'll faint," she had said. I shook my head, mumbling that I was on a diet and used to skipping sweets. Her dark eyes stared at me for a moment before she smirked. "You're so much fuss." A few days later, she had a friend bring back some expensive dark chocolate from abroad and pushed the box towards me. "Keep this around. It helps with dieting. Don't starve yourself, it's not good for you." The reflection on the purple embossed wrapping showed Clara's serious, focused face. It was one of my deepest memories from the past decade. For the first time, I felt like I truly belonged in this world, that someone cared about me. I could feel joy and sorrow. I was living, truly living, not just a puppet controlled by fate, walking helplessly towards a doomed end. With 8 days left on my countdown to death, I received a call from Clara's assistant, Sarah. The young woman who had been with Clara for 7 years sounded polite and respectful. "Leo, when are you coming back? There's some work that needs your immediate attention." I grabbed a handful of earth from a nearby flower bed, tossed it carelessly into the air, and replied with indifference, "Just arrange things as if I'm not coming back. Find someone to fill my position." Sarah sounded troubled on the other end. She cautiously asked, "Leo, are you not planning to return?" I told her not to inform Clara for now. I pressed my lips together. Sarah had been trained by me. She had been with Clara for 7 years and had been my subordinate for just as long. I wanted her to handle my affairs after I was gone, but I couldn't find the words to ask. In the end, I just sighed. "I'll send you an email in a week. Please follow the instructions in it," I told her gently. "Sarah, keep up the good work, and if you ever get married, don't forget to burn some joss paper for me." I realized how morbid that sounded and quickly stopped myself, offering an apologetic smile she couldn't see. "Just keep doing great." Perhaps because I was so near death, I started dreaming of my past life. I dreamt of my father, his elegant figure outlined in a sharp suit, looking like the most dashing dancer at court. It was a stark contrast to the thin, frail man he eventually became, lying in a hospital bed, his body dried out like kindling. the woman he had loved his entire life, the one for whom he willingly became the third wheel in her own marriage, never once showed up at his bedside. Despite his countless calls, his hoarse voice begging her to come see him one last time, she just coldly said, "You deserve to die, and take your son with you. You'll only harm others by being alive." When she said this, I was sitting by his bed, peeling an apple. The knife slipped and cut my pale fingertip. Blood welled up, and I wiped it away blankly. I watched my father's broken expression, finding the whole situation utterly ridiculous. I went downstairs to buy more apples. As soon as I stepped onto the street, the traffic light turned red, and a drunk truck driver unconsciously slammed on the gas. The last thing I saw was shattered glass reflecting my body flying through the air and a terrified, panic-stricken face behind the wheel. In my final seconds, my only thought was of that man, my father. Without me, how could he possibly live on? 3 days remained until my countdown to death. Maybe it was a final surge of energy, but I suddenly felt strong enough to move around. Wrapped in a long, warm shawl, with a bit of lip gloss and hairspray to make myself look presentable, I wandered aimlessly down the cobblestone streets. A street vendor was making intricate sugar figurines, and a little boy gazed at them with envy, tugging on his mother's sleeve. His mother, looking worn and weary, bent down, tears falling from her eyes. "We need to save the money for Daddy's treatment, sweetie," she whispered. I moved closer, bought a panda-shaped sugar figure, and handed it to the boy. He timidly looked up at me, his pale face breaking into a small smile as he called me brother. His mother thanked me frantically. I watched them walk away, hand in hand. Tired from wandering, I decided to head back to the inn. Just as I turned on the town hall steps, I saw the last person I wanted to see. Sarah. She spotted me and ran over excitedly. "Leo, Miss Clara is inside. I'll take you in." I cut her off. "Why are you all here?" "There's a business forum here, and Miss Clara was invited to speak," Sarah explained. Then she asked, "Leo, where are you staying? I checked all the hotels, and you're not listed anywhere in town." Bars and inns didn't count as formal lodgings, and I couldn't remember if I had even registered or not. I tightened the shawl around me and told her slowly, "Sarah, could you please not tell anyone that I'm here?" "Don't tell who?" A calm, familiar voice cut in. I stopped talking immediately. It seemed that just seeing Clara was enough to warm up my aging organs, and my blood started to flow with warmth again, coursing through my veins and pulsing with my heartbeat. I stood there, my head slightly raised, and quietly looked at her. I hadn't seen her in a month, but she hadn't changed. She still looked glamorous, full of life and energy. She looked me up and down, her brow furrowing. "How did you lose so much weight? Haven't you been eating well?" I shook my head. "Maybe I'm just not adjusting to the local food." "Haven't you seen a doctor?" she pressed. "No need, I'm fine." She raised her hand, intending to touch my forehead, but I turned away to avoid her touch. Her arm paused in mid-air, then she casually retracted it. She smiled faintly. "When do you plan on coming back?" "In a couple of days," I lied, looking down at the cobblestones. "I really like it here. I wanted to stay a bit longer." She nodded slightly. "Enjoy yourself then. Stay longer and relax." She seemed to think of something, and her eyes softened. "When you're back in Sterling City, your brother-in-law and I will take you out for a nice dinner." On the street, even the wind carried the faint hint of flowers. I could easily pick out the scent of roses. I love roses because someone I loved once did. In their most charming moments, they would pin a vivid red rose in their sweetheart's hair. And because that year, when Clara first returned to her family home, Amidst a crowd of relatives who dared not voice their displeasure, she had reached out and snapped a red camellia her eldest sister had been nurturing in a pot. Leaning against a table with a grin, she had beckoned to me. "Leo, come here." Then she placed the red flower in the palm of my hand. It was an obvious, passionate gesture, showing her preference for me in front of everyone. In that instant, I started to imagine if I could really marry her and stay by her side forever. I smiled a little at the memory, pulling my shawl tighter around myself. "And you?" I asked gently. "How long will you be staying here?" 3 days, she replied. Clara reached up again, ignoring my attempt to block her, and felt my forehead, noting its chilly coldness. Her eyebrows knitted together tightly. "Are you sure you're okay? Why are you so cold?" I just shook my head. Clara stared at me for a moment, her tone turning serious. "Once we're back in Sterling City, I'm arranging a full health checkup for you." I didn't refuse. Clara came over, pulled my hand, and motioned for me to sit on a nearby stone block to rest. "Then you can show me around. Sound good? Where's your favorite place in Vidia? Take me there." My muddled brain was trying to come up with an excuse to say goodbye, but Clara's smiling words interrupted, sending my thoughts back into turmoil. Panicked, I pushed her away and stood up, my pale, almost transparent skin meeting the sunlight as I clutched my shawl. "Clara, you do realize you're a married woman now, don't you? We shouldn't be doing this anymore." Clara paused, then straightened up, her expression turning a bit indifferent. "Regardless of whether I'm married or not, Leo, you will always be the most important person to me. Always." Always. Always, without any ties of blood or law, the most important. In an adult's world, those two words shouldn't go together. I looked up at Clara. Her eyes were smiling, and I suddenly didn't want to play dumb with her any longer. "Clara," I asked directly, "do you know that I like you?" Clara knew. Of course she knew. I'm not a great actor. I could never hide my emotions, couldn't mask the immense affection I had for her. It showed clearly through every gesture, every glance, every unfinished intonation, even in moments of hesitation. She knew, but she never responded. At my question, Clara's hand clenched involuntarily, forming a tight fist. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. I looked at her and said softly, "Since you know, Clara, please don't appear in front of me anymore. Give me some time to rest, to forget the feelings I have for you. Could you do that?" Clara left. On the empty street, only the rose-scented wind and the distant noises of children playing remained. The taste of iron rose in my throat, the familiar smell of blood returning, and I gradually came back to myself, feeling the ache in my limbs and the coldness of my blood. I had lied to Clara. I didn't want to forget my feelings for her. My admiration for her was the only thing that made me feel alive in this strange world. It kept me going, made me feel like I was still a person, not some monster made of code existing solely for a task. As the metallic tang in my throat subsided, I supported myself against a nearby wall, slowly got up, and walked back to the inn. 2 days were left on the countdown to death. In the early morning, I squatted in a sea of roses near the bridge, wrapped in my coat, digging weakly at the soil with a small spade. Someone patted my head. It was the inn owner's daughter. She had clear, pure eyes and pale, almost transparent skin. She smiled, showing a little fang. At her delicate and romantic age, I didn't want to give her any psychological shadows. I dropped the spade, wobbled to my feet, took 3 steps back, and asked her expressionlessly, "What's up?" She seemed a bit flustered, stretching out her arm with steaming buns in her hand. "I saw you were up early and probably didn't have breakfast. I bought some for you." "Thank you," I said, my smile not reaching my eyes as I turned her down. But I don't need it. Have some. It's not good for your health not to eat. I have someone I really like, I told her bluntly. I won't love anyone else in this lifetime. I bent down, picked a single rose, and quietly plucked off its thorns. Stay away from me, I said, my voice soft but firm. It's better for both of us. The girl ran off quickly, her eyes filled with brokenness and sorrow. A steamed bun lay on the ground, still warm, laced with the scent of roses. I bent down, picked it up, and after a brief moment of hesitation, tossed it into the trash. I wrapped my coat tighter as I slipped back into the inn. The moment I stepped inside, the atmosphere felt off. The boss lady's usually loud voice was missing, the clattering of glasses had disappeared, and everyone was watching quietly, almost timidly, glancing towards the person sitting by the bar. A pair of hands were idly fiddling with a blue cocktail. It was Clara, with a tense-looking Sarah standing beside her. I hesitated for a second, then approached, puzzled. Why are you here? Clara looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. Leo, she said softly. Sarah told me you don't plan on going back. Her voice was gentle, but it sent an inexplicable chill down my spine. I shivered slightly. The silence in the bar was unnervingly quiet, making me anxious. I tightened my coat. Let's talk in my room, not here. The small, shabby room was lined with moss-covered walls, and the air was filled with the faint scent of decay. Clara sat on the edge of the single bed, looking around as she smirked slightly. So, you're not going back? Planning to live here from now on? I handed her a disposable cup of water. It's fine. Livable. Clara let out a derisive snort, saying nothing, but her attitude was clear as day. She seemed on edge, her usual polished demeanor and politeness gone. Her disdain and annoyance were now obvious in her words. She took a deep breath, her tone turning stern. Why won't you come back? I don't want to, I said, clutching the paper cup. I've worked for so many years. I just want to relax a bit. I can give you a vacation, Clara said, keeping her anger in check. Leo, the company is something we built together. You can't just walk away from it. She was earnest and focused, as if she were genuinely trying to convince me not to leave. But I just felt powerless. Did she have to strip away my last bit of dignity to be satisfied? I looked at her, my voice weary. Clara, do you want me to stay and watch you and your husband be all cozy and in love? I didn't, she started, but I interrupted her. I'm telling you I can't. And your husband wouldn't let me stay by your side either. Let me go, Clara, for both our sakes. Let me peacefully fade away here in Vidia, amongst the sea of roses, breathing in their scent and ending this unwanted life. Clara fell silent. After a long while, she straightened up and touched my head, a trace of helplessness in her voice. Leo, you've been the most important person in my life. Just say the word, and I'll give you anything. 10 years, a lifetime. How many 10-year periods do we have in our lives? Are you really willing to let go of all those ties? Her words sounded noble, accusing me of being unkind and ungrateful while lowering herself to evoke sympathy. It was classic Clara, the woman who had defeated 3 industry giants with her rhetoric to become famous. I raised my head, my gaze traveling from her defined jawline to her slender profile, then finally to her eyes that held a hint of longing. She looked at me, her expression filled with emotion. I found it all absurd. I leaned in and asked her slowly, Clara, do you really not understand what it means for me to return, or to stay by your side? You know I like you, and you know that as your secretary of 10 years, my position will be incredibly awkward once you're married. Yet you pretend not to see or understand, blaming me for being heartless. A nearly absurd thought crossed my mind. She knew it all. She was just playing dumb, unwilling to give up the benefits of a political marriage, but also not wanting to lose the tenderness and devotion I provided. She was waiting for me to willingly break all morals and conscience and bow down at her feet. I looked her dead in the eyes and asked softly, "Clara, what do you want me to be to you? To stay by your side forever? An unrelated brother? A secretary who is closer than a husband? Or an unseen secret lover?" Her face turned pale instantly, panic replacing the usual calm in her eyes. She had actually thought about it. She wasn't as noble as I had once imagined. I chuckled quietly. Using all my remaining strength, I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. I watched as she stumbled back, her innocent act shattered as bile and sorrow churned in my throat. Wiping the blood from my lip, I stared at her coldly. "You want it all, don't you, Clara? That's sick." Clara hung her head, silent for a long time. Eventually she spoke, her voice soft. "I'm sorry. I had no intention of making you my lover. However, I can't deny that when I was considering how to keep you by my side forever, the thought did cross my mind. I am sorry for having such a vile idea. But Leo, wanting to keep you in my life is sincere. You have been the most important person to me, and you always will be." I closed my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. "Clara, do you really think that no matter what you do, I'll never leave you? That I will always follow you willingly, being your unrequited shadow?" When she agreed to the arranged marriage, she didn't expect me to be so resolute in leaving. She might have known I would be sad, but she probably thought I'd simply cry a bit. Then she'd coax me back, and things would return to normal. Because my loyalty was unquestionable, she didn't feel the need to worry. It was also laughably naive of her. Clara remained silent for a moment before speaking softly again. "In these 10 years, I've faced so much betrayal. They all used me as a stepping stone. But you, from start to finish, you stayed with me. Before the engagement, I didn't realize you'd care so much about it, to the point of leaving me. Leo, if canceling the engagement would make you stay, I'd do it in a heartbeat." Only when she realized I truly intended to leave did Clara attempt to reconcile. She was subtly using her negotiation skills, watching my reactions carefully, pondering how to achieve her goal while maximizing her own gain. Growing up in an orphanage and lacking a basic moral education, she might still not understand why a marriage without emotional grounding, bound merely by legal papers, would make me so determined to leave. I forced a smile. Clara suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Despite my struggles, she pushed up my sleeve and revealed the old scar on my elbow. What was once a fierce, deep wound was now just a thin, white line. Her fingers gently traced over it as she spoke softly. "Leo, in my position, I have countless ways to keep you here. Threats, captivity, even intimidation. You care about too many people and things. If I hold even one of them against you, you'll never break free, but I don't want to do that." As she touched the scar, her expression softened. "You took that knife for me back then, and I swore I'd never let anyone bully you again. Not even me." Her dark eyes locked onto mine, her voice soft yet firm. "So, Leo, I'll ask you one last time. Will you come with me?" I stared at her, my eyes moving from her lips to her nose, and finally to those expectant eyes of hers. Clara's eyes were beautiful, slightly upturned at the corners, always glistening, full of charm and temptation. From the first moment I saw her, I was drawn in by those eyes, and then I plunged headfirst into an abyss. Only now did I realize that Clara, a cold and ruthless capitalist, had nothing worth loving. I leaned in and told her slowly, "I won't." Shielding Clara from that knife was a long time ago. She was just in her early 20s then, still a bit naive. That day we were on our way to seal a deal when we were ambushed. Her sister had blatantly sent people to knock us out and throw us into a dark alley. There, 4 women were ordered to ruin me, and some men were ordered to chop off one of Clara's hands. It was a stormy night. The thugs yanked my hair, pushing my head into a puddle of grimy water. My consciousness was fading, my vision blurred. Pain and despair were nearly killing me until I saw the cold glint of a knife. Without much thought, I struggled, lunged forward, and took that hit for Clara. Sirens wailed, and we survived. I woke up in the hospital, held in Clara's tight embrace. Her tears soaked through my clothes, chilling my chest. From that day on, Clara changed. She wasn't nice anymore. She became ruthless and terrifying, a true businesswoman. When she told me she planned to marry, she explained it was a strategic move. Mark's family held significant influence abroad, and she needed their power to rise even higher. I asked her, "So even marriage is just a business transaction to you?" Clara had smiled. "Why not? Why not?" Facing this version of Clara, soaked in power and money, I couldn't argue. My genuine perspectives on love and life looked childish to her, not even worth mentioning. Clara guarded me like a prisoner. 2 bodyguards took turns standing outside my door, keeping me in. Every time I approached the exit, I would see their anxious faces. "Please, sir," they'd say. "If you leave, we'll lose our jobs. Please, Leo, have mercy." Their pleading voices, coming from burly, intimidating guards, were oddly dissonant and successfully held me back. Clara was right. I had too many weak spots. If any one of them was seized, I'd be trapped. I couldn't leave. So I talked with the system. Confused, it asked, "Isn't marrying her the simple solution? Just say the words. She wouldn't let you die." I smiled, a taste of blood, which had become routine, rising in my mouth. I swallowed it and wiped my lips. Softly, I said, "If I wanted to marry her just to survive, why wait until now? Even telling Clara about my situation initially would have ensured I'd never die. She would have done everything to keep me alive. She'd have put on the biggest wedding, shown everyone her love for me, and spared no expense to save me. From the very start, I could have chosen to live, but I never wanted to live like that." The system was stunned, its voice turning to static for a moment before it spoke again. "Why?" "You know why Clara is so sure I won't leave her? Because of this darn mission. I came into this world for Clara. I've spent a decade orbiting her. Leaving her means my death. So I'm forced to always follow her, as loyal as a dog. But those are the mission's demands, not my choice." "Yes," the system replied. "It's the mission's demands. The price for your existence." I shifted in my seat. "Do you think these missions have a purpose?" "We gave you another chance at life in exchange for data. It's a fair trade, right?" "Yeah, fair," I conceded. "Survival instincts are ingrained in us. The mission gave me that chance, and I should be grateful. But why is there only oppression in it?" For 10 years, I revolved around Clara. I had no freedom, no autonomy. Everything I did wasn't for me, but for her. It was an almost nightmarish existence. "Clara said everyone left her except me," I continued. "But you know what? I thought about betraying her. I thought about leaving her, using her as a springboard to climb higher. But it never went beyond a thought. This life was borrowed. All I could do was stay by her side. I had no real choice. I loathed this life, living half a life without dignity, freedom, or choice. I would rather choose death." After a while, the system whispered, "But no matter what, living is what matters most. As long as you're alive, there's hope." "I know," I chuckled. "That's why I hoped Clara would want to marry me for real. I hoped I would mean more to her than her profits and her calculations. I hoped her genuine feelings for me would offer a reason to submit to this sad fate. But in the end, I'm still disappointed. In this lonely world, I found no pure sincerity. I'm so tired. I don't want to suppress myself anymore. I'll just go along with this ridiculous fate. Honestly, death seems like a release for me. On my last day, I woke up late. I got dressed, grabbed the small hoe I'd been using, and went to the rose field by the bridge. The bodyguards tried to stop me, but I called Clara right in front of them. Her voice was gentle on the other end. "Have you figured it out, Leo?" "Clara, come meet me at the stone bridge by the inn," I whispered. "I have something important to tell you." Clara paused, then answered with a hint of excitement in her voice. "Okay." The truth is, in my current state, I could barely hold the hoe. I struggled, dragging myself down the path. The innkeeper's daughter couldn't bear to see it and took the tool from me. "Where are you going? I'll take you there," she offered. I thanked her. Clara's engagement party was scheduled for noon. My time would end at noon, too. The golden sun shone down on the bridge, glimmering on the old stone railing. The young woman handed me the hoe, her face full of worry. "Are you sure you're okay?" I shook my head, forced a pale smile, and thanked her again. Pain racked my body, almost causing me to curl up against the bridge post. Sweat trickled down my face, and my vision blurred. I bit my lip hard, mingling the blood from my mouth with the fresh blood from my lip. I felt so cold. I took a moment to steady myself, stood up with the help of the bridge railing, and wiped away the sweat and blood from my face. I forced myself to loosen the soil around a rose bush with the hoe, then bent down to kiss the thorny stems. In the corner of my eye, Clara appeared on the other side of the bridge. She walked quickly towards me. "Why do you look so pale? Didn't you rest well?" She held me, her eyes full of undisguised worry, as if I were truly precious to her. I let the hoe drop to the ground. The countdown clock in my vision was glaring red. The hour column was already empty. My life was ticking down by the second. Leaning on Clara's body for support, I looked at her hypocritical face and suddenly laughed. No one knows better than me that beneath that pretty face is such a cold and ruthless heart. Softly, I began. "Clara, did you know? These past 2 days, I've been regretting ever approaching you. You're so selfish, so vile, so shameless. Everyone's kindness to you is just a tool for you to use and trade." "Leo!" She was stunned. "What are you saying?" I stood up straight, faced the wind, and looked at her fiercely. "I said you're shameless, despicable, and vile. No matter how you pretend, you can't hide the darkness inside you. If I were given another chance, I definitely wouldn't want to meet you. Definitely." Clara's calm facade began to crack, revealing a cruel interior. She shook me. "Leo, you knew what kind of person I am. I'm selfish, I'm heartless. But I never used those tricks against you. Without being ruthless, I wouldn't have survived until now. Leo, you know this best. Why are you blaming me? Why are you leaving me too?" Her eyes were red as she held on to me tightly, her chin resting on my shoulder. Tears flowing onto my clothes, just like when I took that knife for her all those years ago. "We've gone through so much together, Leo. Why are you denying everything between us? You're so important that I would do anything for you, Leo. Why are you being so cruel to me?" "Cruel? But Clara, these are just words. They aren't breaking bones or tearing tendons. They're nothing like the torment that fate put me through. My hatred for fate found no other target, so I placed it all on you. Anyway, you're not innocent." My voice softened. I patted her on the shoulder and gently asked, "Will you marry me, Clara?" Her body turned rigid, perhaps as she began weighing the pros and cons in her mind. At that moment, I smiled slightly, interrupting her thoughts. "No rush. Take your time thinking about it." I swallowed the bitterness in my throat. watching the numbers in the corner of my vision count down to 0. Give me a moment alone, Clara. Go back and think things through. Arrange everything. Then you can come back and confine me. I'll always be here, waiting. I'll never leave. Forever. The word, forever, was spoken like a blood-stained promise. Against the bright red numbers in my vision, it felt conflictingly, painfully beautiful. I had given Clara an unreal dream, one she would cherish in her hands like a treasure until the day it shattered. I sent Clara away. Her clothes were a mess, her neck and shoulders stained with my blood, but she was too flustered to notice. Clara will marry me. She has feelings for me. She just needs time to think and weigh things carefully. But I didn't need any such calculation. My heart heavy, I leaned against the stone post. Blood trickled from my mouth, spreading to my neck and down my shirt. When I die, Clara's expression should be interesting to imagine. She would break down, cry, and grieve, forever haunted by her brief moment of hesitation. This wasn't revenge. I don't hate Clara. I just spitefully hope that no matter who she ends up with, a part of her heart will always have a spot reserved for me, even if it's just regret, remorse, or a haunting shadow. I smiled, thinking about my father, who had so shamelessly gotten involved in other people's marriages, too. I guess we weren't that different after all. I wobbled to the edge of the bridge, standing against the backdrop of the rushing river below, breathing in the rose-scented breeze. Red roses are my favorite. If no one else gets me any, it's fine. I can buy them for myself, place them by my bed, and sleep with their fragrance filling the air. Fate tried to take my dignity, to make my worth tied completely to Clara. I can't change that, and that's okay. But I can choose to stand here and die like a person rather than live on as a ghost. 10 seconds were left on the countdown. I spread my arms wide, embracing the blazing sun and the cool breeze. Facing the rushing river and the swirling sand below, I smiled and leapt. Let me live a dream from which I never have to wake up. In that dream, I am free and passionate, walking proudly in the sunlight, not for anyone else, but just for myself. To learn, to read, to fall in love, to give speeches, to compete, to do whatever I want, to meet anyone I wish, sing any song I like. No systems, no tasks, no so-called strategies, and no life randomly erased. A life lived vibrantly, just for me. Clara, Leo is dead. It was chaos outside, the area surrounded by police. I stood at the edge of the crowd, hearing that familiar name. I squinted at Sarah. They said who died? Sarah's face turned pale, and she dropped to her knees, covering her eyes as tears poured through her fingers. I stared at her, confused. Why was she crying? Who's dead? Leo? No way. He can't be dead. It's impossible. Suddenly, I bolted past the police line, rushing to see the swollen, pale corpse that had been pulled from the river. When the white cloth was lifted, I saw a waterlogged face, swollen and ugly, yet hauntingly familiar, like something from a nightmare. Staggering back, I collapsed onto the muddy ground. My palm dug into the sharp gravel, slicing it open. I think I was bleeding, but I didn't care. I mumbled, "You were already chubby, now you're even uglier. Wake up, please, I don't mind, okay?" I was barely aware of my actions, crawling towards him on pure instinct. My trembling fingers touched his face and tears began to spill uncontrollably. Holding his head, I looked to the sky and wailed. The scene was chaotic and eerie. I cried like a child, almost suffocating, my head buzzing until I finally collapsed on top of him, unconscious. Waking up in the hospital, "Leo" was the first word I said. As I opened my eyes, I spotted a hand offering me a glass of water. My heart relaxed, and I took deep breaths. "I just had a dream where you died," I told him. "Isn't that funny?" The hand paused. Sarah was standing by the bed, looking hesitant. I sent some things off and glanced around the room. Mark, my fiancé, was there. Leo was nowhere in sight. The water cup fell from my hand, shattering on the floor. A piece of glass pierced deep into my foot, and it began to bleed profusely. Mark apologized. Leo committed suicide, Clara. Don't be too sad. Sad? I laughed. No, I'm not sad. Swallowing the blood from my bitten lip, I trembled and fiercely told them, I won't grieve for him. Suicide? Leo, was this your way to spite me? Wake up, you're dreaming. I swallowed the bloody taste in my mouth, regaining my composure. I instructed Sarah. The engagement proceeds as planned. We're going back now. But, ma'am— No buts, I glared at her viciously. Go now, immediately. I needed to leave this damn place. Leo wanted me to marry him, promised me forever, and then he died. Was this to make me regret my hesitation? To get back at me? Utterly ridiculous. You're dead, yet I will keep thriving, surrounded by admirers, men who are better looking, with simpler minds, big eyes, and tall, bridged noses. Variety abounds. While you lay in the rotting earth, being chewed on by worms, the one who should regret this, the one who should pay, is you, fuming. I swept everything off my desk, including the small, succulent Leo had bought, his favorite pen, the vase he had always arranged flowers in. Amid the mess, I slumped into my chair, covering my eyes to hide the tears that were about to fall. Leo, you can't punish me. I'll never regret it. Never. I deliberately erased him from my life. Sarah, Mark, no one else was allowed to talk about him. I wouldn't allow it. For a while, Leo completely vanished from my life. Everything was neat and orderly. The secretary who replaced him was diligent, made better coffee with prettier latte art. Sarah was quieter, but still precise in her work. The engagement plans progressed, the venue was secured, everything was set. My family booked several celebrities to attend. No one would lose face. Everything was normal, moving forward smoothly. I stood by the window one night, holding a cigarette, talking to my reflection in the glass. Without you, I'm fine. My life and work are unchanged. I'm still thriving, see? The one who should regret this. It's you. The clean glass reflected my weary face, all alone. Suddenly, my eyes reddened. I thought that without reminders I would forget him gradually, cover all traces of him. I thought forgetting would be easy, until Mark took me to try on suits for the wedding. I tagged along, having nothing else planned that day. Mark came out of the dressing room, all dressed up. As I did a quick glance from his shoes upward, something felt off. His legs were longer, his waist slimmer, his face a bit fuller. The tilt of his eyes was wrong. The color of his lips. I suddenly realized who I was thinking of. Breathing heavily, I walked out of the store, ignoring Mark calling after me. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel, closing my eyes to calm my racing heart. Just this morning, while brushing my teeth, I had thought to myself that it was rare to think of him. Maybe I had almost forgotten him. But why did he haunt me like a ghost, infiltrating every corner of my life? Suddenly resentful, I mashed the gas pedal, racing down the mountain road with the windows wide open, the wind slapping against my sweaty forehead, trying to wake me up. Leo used to join me here for fast drives whenever I was feeling down. He would grip the seatbelt so tight his fingers turned white with fear, but he always acted brave. Back then, he had said to me, "Everything will pass. Just look forward." Yes, everything will pass, including forgetting you. I parked the car at the top of the hill and crouched down, looking at the morning glories by my feet. I chuckled, pulling one out of habit and handing it behind me. "You always liked these weeds, didn't you?" No one took it from me. I froze. The wind in my ears seemed to freeze. and even the river down the cliff seemed to be frozen solid. The blood in my veins turned icy in an instant. I blamed it all on nostalgia. Right after the wedding, I took my assistant and went abroad. Mark's rapid-fire calls were getting on my nerves. I picked up one on a whim. "I don't care about your crap, so don't bother me." Mark clammed up. "In this business, who is really clean?" I gave a bitter laugh. It was the right time to explore new markets abroad anyway. I was working constantly, staying late and crashing in the office. My assistant lost 10 pounds before she couldn't take it anymore and asked for some time off. I looked at her sallow face and inevitably thought of him again. The first 3 years with me had been tough for him too. He stayed late with me, worked even harder than I did, and sometimes complained about hair loss. "Go on," I told her, my voice pale. "Get some rest." Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the city was bustling with life. He had liked these windows, said they made everything feel open and bright. So I had decorated every place I went to in that style. The wind in Paris was always damp, carrying the scent of rain and dew. Smelling it reminded me of how he hated humidity and always kept dehumidifying bags handy. He never came to Paris with me, but standing on the Champs-Élysées, everything seemed to reflect him, his laughter, his mischief. Away from the office, he'd sway my hand and ask for ice cream like a child. Yet, when I bought the priciest ice cream in the shop and turned to give it to him, he wasn't there. His silhouette, his playful nature, they were just figments of my imagination that I couldn't shake. The ice cream had mostly melted, dripping sticky streams onto my hands. I quietly watched it, then took a lick. It was so sweet. "Aren't you on a diet? This ice cream is super sweet. How can you eat it? Will you wake up and tell me that? Wake up, and I'll invest in a sugar-free tea company, a yogurt company. I'll even open a sugar-free factory just for you. Whatever you want, as long as you wake up, okay?" Tears came before I even knew it, and my nose tingled. They streamed down my face, but I couldn't be bothered to wipe them away. Suddenly, all of it felt so pointless. Trying so hard to forget him, desperately trying to prove that he was just an ordinary person, that his death wouldn't affect me, all just to cover up my fragile pride. But who was I fooling? Sarah, Mark, even my business partners wouldn't mention him. They just pitied me with their eyes. Pity me, who had gotten this far, being pitied by others. It was ridiculous. I crouched on the sidewalk, clutching my hollow chest, feeling lost and hurt. The tears, thin and salty, slipped into my mouth, the bitterness reaching all the way to my heart. Lifting my gaze, I thought I saw Leo, wrapped in his shawl. He stood there, examining me for a moment. He reached out with a pale hand, but feeling wronged, I refused to take it. I just stared at him, hoping he would comfort me, talk to me. But he drew his hand back and shook his head, his voice gentle yet chilling. "Clara, no one waits for you forever." He vanished in an instant. I lunged for him, landing hard on the cold marble floor. My forehead was bleeding. My glasses were broken. Dizzy, I reached out hopelessly, bumping into poles and stones, stumbling into bug-filled bushes. Finally, I just knelt there, my face turned up to the sky, blood and tears mixing as they seeped into my mouth, desperate. Everyone said that time heals all wounds. I believed them. Since that night in Paris, Leo became a taboo subject. No one talked about him. I immersed myself in work, as though being busy would numb the pain. I spent a decade climbing higher and higher from the top of the corporate ladder, with my floor-to-ceiling windows. Beneath my feet lay wealth and power, countless flatteries and words of admiration. After 10 years, I thought that if I ever saw Leo again, I could greet him casually. See? Without you, I'm doing just fine. I'm married, successful. He stood there, in a white suit, quietly watching me. Then he stepped forward, catching the hem of my dress with a single finger. I crumbled instantly. Years of experience had taught me to control my emotions, to never let anger, joy, greed, or desire show on my face. But holding him, the tears wouldn't stop pouring down. My arms locked around him tightly, trying to absorb him into my very being, to never let him go, to pocket him and keep him forever. I regretted it. I truly regretted it. He had repeatedly told me that there were things in life far more important than profit. I ignored him, refused to believe it. I arrogantly pushed him away and drove him to his death. He should hate me, blame me, despise me. He should crush my bones to dust if he wished. I would take it all, as long as he got his anger out. Yet, with all the offerings I had made to gods and spirits, could I shamefully hope for another chance in the next life? A life with you? Would that be okay? After days of dreary travel, I wandered back to Vidia. I stood by the bridge he had jumped from, lost in thought. He was so afraid of the cold. What was he thinking? To leap into that icy river? He was afraid of pain. I wondered if, as the water filled his lungs, he had curled up, wanting to call for help, to scream out. I climbed over the bridge's railing, gazing at the river below. It was wrapped in white waves and swirling rose petals. Jagged rocks were everywhere. I seemed to see him there, his eyes closed and a smile on his lips. Opening my arms, I fell. I took a step forward, feeling weightlessness crash against my mind as dizziness took over. For 10 years, I was alone in this world. 10 years. Time hasn't erased my feelings for him. Instead, every word he ever said, every smile, every move, they have become more vivid in my mind, crystal clear. In these 10 years, every time I woke up in the middle of the night, every time I was haunted by nightmares, I would curl up in bed, holding his photo, murmuring about what we once had. Leo once told me that no one can't live without someone else. Back then, I nodded in agreement. But now, I want to tell him that's not true. Without you, I really can't live. So, in the next life, have some pity on me, okay?